I never expected a simple walk through the park to end with me caught in the middle of someone else's argument. I was just there to clear my head, maybe grab a coffee from the stand by the fountain, and enjoy the rare moment of calm on a Sunday afternoon. Instead, I found myself frozen, watching this couple having a full-on fight right in front of me, and then out of nowhere, one of them turned and started talking to me like I was part of the whole mess. It all started when I noticed them sitting on a bench just a few feet away. The guy was pacing back and forth, face flushed, voice rising every few seconds. His boyfriend stayed seated, arms crossed, looking like he was trying to keep his cool but failing miserably. Honestly, their argument was loud enough that I couldn't help but listen in, even though I told myself to mind my own business. Sometimes curiosity just gets the better of you, you know? The pacing guy, I'll call him Mark for now because I never actually caught his name, looked like he was about to blow his top. He was mid-sentence, something about trust and lies, his voice cracking just enough to show he wasn't just angry but hurting too. The seated guy, let's say that was Jake, kept shaking his head, eyes darting around like he was searching for the right words or maybe trying to avoid confrontation altogether. I was standing there awkwardly with my coffee, pretending to check my phone, when suddenly Mark stopped pacing. He turned sharply and fixed his gaze on me. The world seemed to narrow down to just his voice and the way he looked, confused, desperate, and a little scared. "Hey," he said, almost like he was starting a conversation, but also like he was accusing me of something. "Do you know what it feels like when the person you love won't even hear you out?" I blinked, caught completely off guard. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't about to step into someone else's relationship drama. But there was something in his eyes that didn't let me look away. It was raw, like he was hanging on to the last thread of hope, or maybe trying to decide if he was ready to give up. Jake stayed silent, watching us both with this guarded look, like he was waiting for Mark to either explode or back down. I took a sip of my coffee and realized I might be about to say something I never planned on. This wasn't just some random argument anymore. It was something that needed to be said, or at least heard. And somehow, in that weird, unexpected moment, Mark decided I was the one to hear it. I'm still not sure why, but at that exact second, standing there with the sun warming my back and the noise of the city fading into background static, everything changed. And I knew I wasn't just going to walk away from this. I didn't want to be the guy who jumped into someone else's mess. But Mark's voice had this edge that pulled me in. So I said, "I don't know exactly what it feels like, but I'm listening." For a second, he looked taken aback, like he wasn't sure if I was being serious or just humoring him. Then his jaw tightened, and he let out a shaky breath. "It feels like you're screaming underwater," he said quietly. "Like no matter how loud you try, the person you care about can't or won't hear you." Jake's eyes flicked between Mark and me, and I could see the tension tightening his jaw. I guess Jake hadn't expected this either, a stranger getting pulled into their fight. Mark ran a hand through his hair and then sat down next to Jake, closer than I'd thought they'd get after the way they were snapping at each other. I just want him to understand that it's not about blaming. It's about feeling like I'm invisible sometimes, like I'm shouting into the void. Jake finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "I'm not ignoring you, Mark. I'm just trying to process things before I respond. You don't get to decide how I handle my feelings." I could feel the weight of their words hanging in the air. This wasn't some petty quarrel. It felt deeper, older, like there had been a buildup of things neither of them had said out loud until now. I shifted on my feet, unsure if I should step back or keep listening. But something told me they needed someone who wasn't already tangled in the history between them. Maybe just someone who'd listen without judgment. So, I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "What are you hoping will happen right now?" Mark looked at me like I'd asked the hardest question in the world. "I want Jake to see me, not just the guy he's arguing with or the boyfriend when things get rough, but me, the person he promised to love through the good and the bad." Jake swallowed hard, looking down at his hands. "I do see you, Mark. I don't know how to be the person you need when I'm struggling too. Maybe I'm scared of failing you." There was a silence between them, and I realized I was holding my breath. It felt like they were on the edge of something, either breaking apart or finally breaking through. I wanted to say something helpful, but I wasn't sure what. So instead, I just stood there, a quiet witness to their moment. Mark's eyes glistened, and he reached out, hesitating a second, before taking Jake's hand. "We're both scared," he admitted, "but I don't want to keep fighting like enemies. I want us to fight together." Jake squeezed his hand, and I saw the tension in his shoulders ease just a little. "Maybe we need to stop yelling and start listening," Jake said softly. They looked at each other for a long moment, like they were weighing whether to take a step toward something fragile but real. I was about to say something, maybe something stupid about how love isn't easy, or how all relationships have fights, but Mark cut me off before I could. "Thank you," he said, voice thick, "for listening, for not just walking away." I shrugged, feeling kind of awkward. Sometimes you just don't know who needs to hear you or who might need to listen. Jake gave me a small, tired smile, a look that said, "Thanks for being here," and just like that, the fight seemed to lose some of its fire. The air between them was still charged, but quieter, like the storm had passed enough for them to find a little calm. I took a step back, figuring my part in this unexpected drama was done. But then Mark looked at me again, eyes softer now, and said, "Hey, if you're not busy, would you want to grab a coffee? I think I need to talk without yelling for a while." I blinked, surprised. Here I was, a total stranger to these two guys, suddenly invited into their world. My first thought was, this is definitely not how I planned my Sunday, but then I realized maybe this was exactly what I needed too. "Yeah," I said, smiling. "I'm free." Jake nodded too, and for the first time since I'd arrived, they looked like a couple who might actually make it through the mess. As we walked toward the coffee stand, I wondered how often life throws you into moments like this, where strangers become unexpected allies, where fights turn into conversations, and where maybe, just maybe, something new can begin. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't just a random bystander anymore. Somehow, I was part of their story now. And that felt kind of amazing. We settled at a small table beside the coffee stand, the hum of people passing by blending into the background, making the space feel a little more private than it really was. Mark ordered 2 black coffees, and I got a latte, just to remind myself I was here as an outsider, not a therapist or some kind of relationship guru. Which, believe me, I wasn't. Mark was the first to break the silence, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. "I don't even know how we got here," he said, voice quieter this time. "We've been together for, 3 years? And suddenly it feels like we're strangers." Jake nodded, eyes fixed on his cup. "It's like living in the same house but passing each other like ghosts." I wondered what it was like to reach that point, where the person you thought you knew inside and out starts to feel like a mystery you can't solve. I mean, I'd been in relationships before, but I never thought about it turning into this kind of distance without any big fight to explain it. "So what happened?" I asked, careful not to sound intrusive. Mark looked up, then down again, like weighing how much to share. "I guess it started with little things. Plans canceled last minute, messages left unread. But the real blow was when Jake started shutting me out about his work. Not the usual stuff, something personal he was dealing with, and he wouldn't talk about it." Jake's expression tensed. I didn't want to drag him into my problems. I thought I was protecting him. Protecting him by shutting me out is like building a wall between us. Mark countered, voice breaking just a bit. It was clear they were both hurting, but in different ways. One desperate to be included, the other pulling away to cope. I remembered a time I'd done something similar, shutting out my own boyfriend because I thought my stress was too much to share. It never worked out well. "Sounds like you're both afraid," I said. Afraid of getting hurt or hurting each other, Mark and Jake exchanged a glance that held a complicated mix of shame and hope. "Yeah," Jake finally said. "That's exactly it. So what do you want to do?" I asked, because honestly, it felt like they were stuck at a crossroads, and I was just watching the traffic light flicker between red and green. Mark took a deep breath. "I want to try again, but different this time. No more walls, no more guessing games." "Me too," Jake said, reaching across the table to take Mark's hand. "I want us to be a team, not opponents." There was something incredibly human about that moment. the way two people could be so tangled up in pain and fear, but still choose to fight for each other. I felt a strange warmth in my chest watching them, like witnessing a fragile thing being stitched back together. The conversation drifted then, from serious to lighter stuff. Mark told me about how they met, some cringe-worthy online dating story involving mismatched pizza toppings and a shared obsession with old movies. Jake laughed, the tension in his eyes softening as he teased Mark about his terrible movie taste. I chimed in with my own awful dating disasters, and suddenly the three of us were just guys talking about life, love, and all the messy bits in between. As the afternoon slipped away and the sun dipped lower, I realized how rare it was to find that kind of connection, even if it was unexpected and complicated. Before we knew it, it was getting dark, and the park was starting to empty out. Mark looked at me and said, "You know, you should have told us your name back there. Stranger or not, you helped more than you know." I smiled. "I'm Alex." Jake shook my hand firmly. "Jake." Mark nodded with a grin. "Mark." We stood up, and for a moment, I hesitated, wondering if this was goodbye or the start of something else. Jake cleared his throat. "We're heading to that new jazz place on 5th. Care to join?" I blinked. Jazz wasn't really my scene, but after everything that had happened in just a few hours, I figured, why not? "Sure," I said. "Why not?" As we walked away from the coffee stand, the city lights flickering on around us, I felt like I'd stumbled into more than just a random afternoon in the park. Maybe, just maybe, this was the moment life decided to shake things up. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready for it. The jazz bar on 5th wasn't exactly my usual hangout, but the place had this cozy vibe. Dim lights, exposed brick walls, and a small stage where a trio was setting up. The kind of spot where you could pretend the world outside didn't exist for a little while. Perfect for conversations that needed space to breathe. Mark and Jake led the way to a table near the back, away from the crowd. As we settled in, Jake ordered a round of drinks, and I sat back, trying to take it all in. Here I was, a guy who'd planned on a quiet Sunday, now sitting with two strangers who had just invited me into their lives. It felt surreal, but in the best way possible. "So," Jake said, swirling his glass, "what about you, Alex? What's your story?" I shrugged, feeling a little exposed all of a sudden. "Nothing nearly as dramatic as you two. Just figuring things out, I guess. Work's been intense, and dating's been, well, a series of unfortunate events." Mark laughed. "Are we all?" The music started, a smooth saxophone filling the room, the kind that makes you want to lean in and forget your phone exists. I glanced at Mark, noticing how his eyes softened when he looked at Jake. There was still that spark in them, the kind that told me their fight hadn't broken them, just revealed cracks they were willing to repair. "So what was it that started all this?" I asked gently. "If you don't mind me asking." Mark took a sip of his drink, then sighed. "It's stupid, really. A misunderstanding about trust. Jake thought I was hiding something, and I thought he wasn't being honest about how he felt. We stopped talking, and the silence grew louder than any argument." Jake nodded. "Yeah, and sometimes silence hurts more than words. I didn't want to admit I was scared, so I just pulled away." I could relate to that. Fear has a sneaky way of messing things up. "You know," I said, "it's weird how we expect the people closest to us to just know what we're thinking or feeling, but they don't. We have to tell them, even when it's hard." Mark smiled, a bit wryly. "Easier said than done." "True." I agreed, but it's the only way I've found to keep from drifting apart. We talked more, the conversation weaving between light and heavy, laughter and silence. I learned they'd met in college, bonded over a shared love of obscure bands and terrible 90s movies. Jake was a graphic designer, quiet but passionate about his work, while Mark was a teacher, always the one trying to bring a little more kindness into the world. As the night deepened, the music slowed, and the bar emptied out. The three of us lingered, caught in the kind of conversation that makes you forget time exists. At one point, Mark reached out and lightly touched Jake's hand across the table, a small gesture that spoke volumes. Jake responded with a smile that reached his eyes, and I felt like I was watching something fragile and beautiful hold steady against the odds. "Thanks for being here tonight," Jake said softly, looking at me. "You have no idea how much this means." I shrugged again, feeling a warmth I wasn't expecting. Sometimes, all it takes is someone willing to listen. Before I knew it, it was after midnight, and the bartender was giving us the last call nod. We decided to call it a night, stepping out into the cool air, the city quieter now but still alive with possibility. As we walked back toward the subway, the three of us side by side, Mark nudged me with a grin. "So Alex, you're officially part of our story now," I laughed. "Guess I am. Didn't see that coming." Jake looked over at me, a subtle softness in his gaze. Maybe this is the start of a new chapter. I felt that too, the strange, exciting promise of something unexpected. I didn't know exactly what it was yet, but I knew I wanted to find out. When the subway doors slid open, I hesitated. For the first time that night, I wasn't in a rush to go home, to be alone. Maybe, just maybe, this random day was about to change everything. "Want to grab breakfast tomorrow?" I asked, surprising myself by how natural it felt to say. Mark and Jake exchanged a look, and then Jake nodded. "Yeah, we'd like that." As the train pulled away, leaving the city lights flickering behind us, I realized that sometimes the moments you don't plan for turn out to be the ones that matter the most. And maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something real. The next morning, I woke up later than I intended, my phone buzzing with a message from Mark. "Breakfast at 10? There's a little place around the corner from my apartment. Great coffee, dangerous pancakes." I smiled, tucking my phone away and quickly getting ready. I wasn't sure what I was walking into, but I had this feeling that whatever it was worth it. When I stepped outside, the city was just waking up. The air was cool, with that faint hint of spring in it. I made my way to the cafe, nerves twisting in my stomach like it was a first date, even though technically it wasn't. Or was it? I arrived a little early and spotted Mark and Jake seated by the window, already chatting quietly. Mark looked up and waved, Jake's smile lighting up when he saw me. "Hey, Alex," Mark said as I slid into the booth. "Glad you made it. Wouldn't miss it," I replied, glancing at the menu but already knowing the pancakes were the way to go. The conversation flowed easily, like it had the night before, but with a different kind of warmth. There wasn't any pressure, just three guys sharing a meal and the kind of honest laughter you don't get to hear every day. Jake leaned back, rubbing the back of his neck. "So how do you know when something's worth fighting for?" I paused, thinking about my own tangled past. "I guess when you can't imagine letting go, even though it's scary to hold on." Mark nodded slowly. That's how I felt about Jake. Even when things got rough, I knew there was something there worth saving. Jake reached across the table and took Mark's hand again. The gesture so natural now, it felt like it had always been part of their story. "And what about you, Alex? What's your story when it comes to love?" I hesitated. I haven't been great at holding on. Sometimes I push people away before they can leave me. They both looked at me with that kind of empathy that makes you want to open up even more. "It's hard," Jake said softly. "I've been there too." Mark squeezed Jake's hand gently. "We all have our walls, but sometimes it takes a stranger to help us see what's behind them." The moment was quiet, but it was charged with something real. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a new beginning, even if I wasn't sure what that looked like yet. After breakfast, we wandered through the nearby park, the sunlight filtering through the trees like it was spotlighting this unexpected connection we were forging. At one point, Mark stopped and looked at me, eyes searching. "Do you want to come over? We can keep talking or just hang out." "No pressure." I caught a glimpse of Jake's hopeful smile and realized how much I wanted to say yes. "Yeah," I said, surprising even myself. "I'd like that." Their apartment was cozy, filled with books and art and little touches that spoke of the life they'd built together. It felt welcoming, like a safe space I hadn't realized I'd been craving. We spent the afternoon talking, laughing, sharing stories about our lives, the good, the bad, the messy bits that usually get left out. As the sun dipped lower, casting a warm glow through the windows, I realized something important. I wasn't just an outsider anymore. I was becoming part of something, a triangle of trust, healing, and maybe, if we were lucky, love. Later, as I was getting ready to leave, Mark pulled me aside. "Thanks for being brave enough to listen and stick around," he said quietly. Jake nodded, eyes warm. You've already changed things for us." I smiled, feeling a little overwhelmed but in the best way. "Maybe we can figure this out together," I said. And for the first time in a long time, that didn't feel like a scary thought. It felt like home. Leaving their apartment that evening, I felt lighter than I had in weeks, maybe months. There was this strange comfort in knowing I wasn't alone, even if I'd only just met Mark and Jake. Somehow, in just a day or so, their messy, complicated love story had started to feel like something I wanted to be a part of. Over the next few days, we kept in touch more than I expected. Texts in the middle of work, casual hangouts that stretched into late-night talks, and coffee runs that turned into mini-adventures around the city. It felt like the start of an unexpected friendship, but there was definitely something else simmering beneath the surface, something that neither of us quite named yet. One chilly evening, Jake invited me over to watch a movie. Mark was out teaching a late class, so it was just the two of us. I wasn't sure what to expect, but when I arrived, Jake was curled up on the couch with a blanket, a bowl of popcorn on his lap, and this quiet smile that made my heart skip. We picked a comedy, something light and dumb, and settled in. I was surprised by how easy it felt to be around him. No pretenses, no awkward silences. Just two guys sharing a couch and a lot of laughs. Halfway through the movie, Jake nudged me. "Thanks for being around," he said, voice low. I didn't realize how much I needed this. I shrugged, feeling my cheeks warm. Sometimes you just need someone who listens without judgment. He turned toward me, eyes searching. "Do you think people can really change? Or maybe just learn to be better?" I considered that. I think change is messy and slow. But yeah, people can grow if they want to. Jake nodded thoughtfully. "I want to grow. I want us, Mark and me, to be better. And maybe me too." The honesty in his voice caught me off guard. I wanted to reach out, to tell him everything was going to be okay, even though I knew none of us had the answers yet. Before I could say anything, his phone buzzed. A message from Mark. "Almost home. Can't wait to see you both." Jake's eyes lit up, and suddenly there was this warm anticipation in the room. I realized then that I wasn't just a bystander. I was becoming part of their story, a thread woven into their complicated, beautiful tapestry. When Mark got home, the three of us settled into this quiet rhythm. We talked about everything: fears, hopes, the hard stuff that usually stays hidden. And for the first time, it felt like we were all on the same page, trying to figure out how to build something new from the pieces. One night, as we were winding down, Mark turned to me with a half smile. "You know, someone once told me that love isn't just about finding the perfect person. It's about learning to see the imperfect one perfectly." Jake laughed softly. "That's cheesy, but I get it." I looked at both of them and realized how lucky I was to have stumbled into this mess of feelings and truths. "Maybe that's what we're all trying to do," I said. "See each other, even when it's hard." They nodded, and in that moment, the room felt full of hope, of possibility, of the messy, real kind of love that doesn't come with guarantees but is worth fighting for. As I left that night, I wasn't sure where this was headed. What I did know was that whatever happened, I wasn't alone anymore. And that made all the difference. After that night, things started to shift in ways I didn't quite expect. It wasn't some sudden romance or a neat solution to the mess they'd been tangled in. Instead, it was a slow unraveling of walls, mine and theirs. One conversation, one shared laugh, one quiet moment at a time. We fell into a rhythm that felt natural. Weekends spent exploring hidden bookstores or debating over which pizza place was actually the best in the city. Weeknights filled with deep talks about everything from work stress to childhood memories. Even the awkward silences were comfortable somehow, like we were learning the language of each other's presence. One Thursday evening, Mark invited me over after work. Jake was already there, cooking something that smelled suspiciously like his version of spaghetti, which Mark teased mercilessly. I walked in to find them both in the kitchen, Mark chopping garlic with exaggerated care while Jake stirred the sauce. "Hey, stranger." Mark greeted me, flashing that lopsided grin that had me wondering how someone could look so charming while wielding a knife. "Smells good," I said, setting down my bag. Jake looked up, wiping his hands on a towel. You're just in time. We were about to test Mark's cooking skills. Mark pretended to be offended. I am a culinary artist. Jake laughed. A very patient one. We settled at the small kitchen table, sharing a bottle of cheap red wine and trading stories. The conversation drifted easily, but beneath the easy banter, I could sense a current of something deeper, an unspoken tension I wasn't sure how to address. Later, as the night wound down, Mark pulled me aside in the living room. His eyes held that same hesitant vulnerability I'd seen the first time we met. "Alex," he started, voice quiet. "I know this is all new and maybe a little confusing. I just want you to know how much it means that you're here, that you're part of this." I looked at him, feeling a swell of something unfamiliar but welcome. "Honestly," I said, "I wasn't sure how I fit in, but now, I think maybe I do." He smiled, relief evident. "Good, because we want you to." Meanwhile, Jake had disappeared into the bedroom, and when he came back, he seemed quieter than usual, which didn't escape my attention. Later, alone with him in the hallway, I asked gently, "Everything okay?" He hesitated, eyes flickering away. "I'm just scared, Alex, of what this means, of losing what I have with Mark, and of feelings I'm not sure how to handle." I nodded because I got it. Fear has this way of sneaking in, especially when you're dealing with something so raw and new. "I'm scared too," I admitted. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't have to have all the answers right now." Jake smiled softly, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of peace in his eyes. The days that followed were a dance of closeness and caution. We learned each other's boundaries, navigated jealousy and doubt, and celebrated small victories, like the first time Jake laughed without reservation at one of my terrible jokes, or when Mark reached for my hand without hesitation. One afternoon, we found ourselves at a quiet cafe, the three of us sharing a single booth. Mark was animatedly telling a story about his class, Jake was teasing him, and I was just soaking in the warmth of it all. Then Mark looked at me, his eyes serious. "This feels right, you know. Weird and unexpected, but right." Jake nodded, reaching for my hand under the table. "We don't know where this will go, but I want to find out with you." My heart hammered in my chest, a mix of excitement and nerves. "I want that too," I said, squeezing his hand gently. In that moment, the world seemed to quiet around us, leaving just the three of us, imperfect, complicated, but together. I don't know what the future holds, and honestly, that's a little terrifying. But I do know this. Sometimes love isn't about neat lines or easy answers. Sometimes it's about showing up, being vulnerable, and choosing each other again and again. And for now, that's enough. Months passed, and what began as a chance encounter in the park slowly became a steady, unexpected relationship between the three of us. It wasn't without its challenges. There were disagreements, moments of jealousy, and plenty of awkward conversations. But we faced them all together, learning to communicate openly and honestly in ways none of us had before. One evening, as we sat on Mark and Jake's small balcony watching the city lights flicker on, I felt that familiar mix of nervousness and contentment. Mark had his arm around Jake's shoulder, and Jake was leaning into me, our legs tangled together. It was quiet, simple, but exactly what I didn't know I'd been craving. Mark broke the silence. "You know, this feels like home. Not perfect, but ours." Jake nodded. "Yeah, we're figuring it out, but I can't imagine doing this without you both." I looked at them, feeling something warm settle deep inside me. "Me neither. I never planned to be here, but I'm grateful I am." We sat there, just breathing the moment in, no need for grand gestures or promises. Because sometimes love isn't about sweeping declarations. It's about showing up, day after day, choosing each other even when it's messy. That night, as I walked home, I thought about how strange life can be. How one unexpected moment, just being willing to listen, can change everything. Mark and Jake taught me about patience, vulnerability, and the bravery it takes to love fully. Maybe our story doesn't look like a traditional romance. Maybe it's messy, uncertain, and still unfolding. But it's real. And it's mine. And honestly, that feels like enough.